All right. So I'm going to be covering cognition, going a little bit more into cognition as we did last week. We talked about some theories with Piaget and Vygotsky and others. I think your book mentioned a couple others in there, but that's really the primary areas that I covered is the cognitive development. Today we're going to go into a little bit more in depth as far as how the brain develops and how memories are formed and learning happens with young children up through the adolescent stages. Before we get into that, I do want to check in with everybody. Does anybody have any questions with the assignments or anything like that? Groups?
Simon 5's on YouTube, right?
All right, we've got a couple people chiming in here. Tala, do you want to go?
Oh, I was just wondering if assignment due was assignment 5 was due for Monday, because typically they're usually due around like Saturday or Sunday, but I saw it was a different day.
It said Monday?
Yeah. I might have. Okay, yeah, I might have. Yeah.
Let me look at that quick. All right, I am showing assignment 5 due the 5th. So it's midnight the 5th, so that would be Sunday night, right?
Yeah, my bad.
Okay.
That's Monday.
Is it?
The 5th is Monday.
Yeah, that's Monday.
Is it really? Huh, I don't know how that happened. Okay, fixed. Well, thanks for bringing that to my attention. You almost got an extra day. Everybody blame Tala. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Is it Tala or Tayla?
I go by Taylor, but I get Tala a lot.
Tayla, okay. Well, I guess Tala would be 2 L's maybe, so Tayla. All right, I won't mess that up again. All right, any other questions? How are groups going? Everybody connected with their groups? No issues there?
Yeah, they're good.
They're good? Okay, glad to hear. All right, so I'm going to kind of go off script a little bit. I know your book talks about metacognition and learning strategies, and I know part of your assignment was to ask another student, and if you haven't done this already, start thinking about it because it's going to be due Sunday, not Monday, other students about their study strategies, okay? Because we have different strategies for to acquire and demonstrate knowledge of different types of tests, for example. So for example, what are some of your strategies with studying for like our midterm? We got a midterm coming up and it's going to be multiple choice. What are some study strategies you have for multiple choice tests? Anybody?
Create like a study guide for it.
Okay, what does that study guide look like? What is your strategy for the study guide?
Like to put anything that we learned from your class on there, just like and make questions that we wouldn't think will be on there.
Okay. So kind of covering questions that you think are going to be on there. Are you going to really go into like theoretical concepts with a multiple choice test?
No.
Why not?
Because it's too much information, because you're just going to be like guessing. Or not.
Right. We're not going to over prepare, right? We're not, well, maybe over prepare. You're not going to go to that length because you don't need to know that. Now, if we had an essay, if I were to tell you that there was an essay on this, and by the way, last year I did have an essay, but we're not doing that this year just for simplicity. But if I were to have an essay on theoretical concepts, you're probably going to want a little bit more in-depth knowledge of some of these systems we're talking about, some of these theories. So we have different strategies for different outcomes and different expectations. And we learn that at a very young age. That's a strategy we developed back in, if you think about it, back in first, second, third grade, right? So anyway, before we get into cognitive development, I do have a quick video to play. Now this is probably not the last time you're going to see this video because it has to do with attachment. So I'm going to share my screen with you here. Now, this is a bit of an old video. Unfortunately, there's not Any new ones? This is Harlow's Monkeys, and this deals with attachment. So go ahead and we're going to watch it. I know it's, like I said, a very old video, but it really proves the point the best, and it hasn't really needed to be replicated, or at least it's not videoed that it's replicated. So okay, I'm going to play it now.
For new knowledge about our universe, our world, and ourselves. This monkey is an orphan, separated from his mother since the day of his birth. Literally, his life hangs by a thread, a soft cheesecloth pad that is his only companion, his only comfort. Once a day, the pad is removed for cleaning.
This is the laboratory of psychologist Harry Harlow.
Troubled, distressed, permanently deprived.
He is studying monkeys to better understand human relationships.
That's not my
They
voice.
die for want of love.
Harlow believes he can use science to study love. With a series of pioneering experiments, he explores territory where few scientists have ventured.
Harlow said that there was such a thing as a science of love, for example, that love, the kind of intimacy that characterized relationships between mothers and infants, although in his case he studied monkeys, could be the object of science, that you literally could move love into a laboratory, put it under a microscope.
Harlow is studying love because he believes it makes an indelible impact on a young life. The relationship between a mother and her child, what Harlow calls our earliest social environment, could hold the key to explaining behavior throughout life. Harlow designs a set of ingenious experiments. He raises a baby monkey, allowing it to choose between two surrogate mothers, a wire mother that feeds it, and a cloth mother that doesn't. A cloth mother that Harlow thinks might provide something else: comfort and love.
Here's baby 106, weaned on a wire mother. He's going to the wire mother.
But this infant quickly runs to the cloth mother, where he will stay for the next 18 hours cuddling. In Harlow's mind, choosing nurturing over sustenance. In another experiment, Harlow creates a fearful situation. Whom does the infant turn to now?
Let's find out what his reactions to his mother are when we frighten him. He's scared, all right. And he does what any child will do in a similar situation. He was running to his mother, to touch her, to drive away his fear.
To Harlow, there is something about the experience of comfort and love, even more than food, that seems crucial to all these monkeys. But what happens when the infant is raised alone, without any mother at all, wire or cloth? In this situation, the orphan monkey stays alone. He won't even go to the cloth mother when frightened, but retreats into his own world. Harlow believes he has shown how want of love can damage an infant for life, and he worries the same is true for people.
What comes through loud and clear in Harry Harlow's experiment was that early experience and the environment were crucial to the healthy development of the infant child. And that in a sense, if you messed up, if the right kind of maternal presence was not there during the critical years, then that infant might grow up to be an adult incapable of forming healthy relationships with other kinds of people.
All right. So who cares to share their thoughts? What does this have to do with learning and memory, do you think? Thinking of today's lesson.
When I was reading, when I was taking notes yesterday, it was saying that you said with the memory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So basically, since he doesn't have anybody, like he knows that he's supposed to have like a mother to like be there for him and keep him safe. So I guess what was in there, he thought that that was mom. So he always ran to that for help.
Right, right. So nurturing provides attachment, secure attachment. We're going to talk about attachment in later chapters, but this is not the first time that this concept is going to come up for us in this class because our attachment really is our security. And when we feel secure, we feel like we're able to venture out and try things. And if you remember from last week, we talked about circular motion, right? Repeated circular motion with children. They try different things until they get some kind of result, either a positive result or a negative result. And depending on what that result is, they're either going to try it again or they're going to stay away from it, right? So with our secure attachment, it really dictates on how much we feel confident and safe enough to venture out and try things new. And that's very much true with children and their ability to start developing learning and memorization strategies, okay? And we'll talk about that here shortly with the trial and error. So anyway, secure attachment is very, very important because without that security, children are going to tend to be less likely to venture out and try things new, which is exactly what they're doing with their learning strategies. All right, so let me share my screen with you. All right. So your book covered many memorization strategies that children tend to employ. The one that I really wanted to talk about is fuzzy trace theory. Now, for those of you that read your books, oops, what happened? What is the fuzzy trace theory? Does anybody remember? Is it verbatim or verbatim? Verbatim, I think it's I. So two things really go into the fuzzy trace theory. As children, they're very literal, and you probably picked up on that. If you ever talk to like a 2, 3, or 4-year-old, they're very literal with how they describe things, right? As they get older, remember, we try and conserve as much energy as possible. So being literal is exhausting for us, right? We're absorbing so much information that it's not possible for us to memorize and regurgitate all that information. So we start packaging things. If you remember schemes, we start packaging things into a neat little package, package that we can all understand, right? So to demonstrate what fuzzy trace theory is, I think your book used an example of a, let me see if I can find where it said that. An older child says, I took out the trash last night just like I always do. And the younger child says, nuh-uh, you were too busy, so I did it. According to fuzzy trace theory, which child would you believe? The younger or the older child?
The older child.
Okay, that would be, what's that? I thought somebody said
I
something.
think the younger child.
Okay, why?
Because, well, when kids are young, they usually tell the truth. I
Right.
think.
Yeah. For the most part, there might be some embellishment in there, but for the most part, you're right. They're going to be more focused on what actually happens, whereas the older child is they're not intentionally lying, but if you notice what I said in there, what I usually do. That's what they usually do. They're relying on a scheme, on a script, because that's what they usually do. So that's an example of fuzzy trace theory. Let me try another one with you. Let's see if I can find it. So one of the questions that came up here, can you tell me when a little kid is lying? You can tell when a little kid. Okay, Maria, do you have, are you able to explain that? Do you have a microphone? I guess not. Okay. All right, so bear with me here. Just have one thing I want to try with you to demonstrate how fuzzy memory occurs. All right. So I'm going to read off a list of words. If you can all take out a piece of paper and get ready to write. Now, I don't want you to write until after I've stopped reading, okay? Are y'all ready? All right. Bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, wake, snooze, blanket, doze, slumber, snore, nap, peace, yawn, drowsy. So go ahead and write down as many words as you can remember me saying. Give you just a couple seconds here. All right, who's brave? Who's bold? Who wants to share with me their list?
I have I have bed, dressed, awake, dream, snooze, and drowsy.
Okay. Anybody else?
I have bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, wait, snooze, blanket, doze, slumber, snore, nap, peace, yawn, and drowsy.
Okay. Did anybody write sleep?
I wrote sleep.
I had
Okay.
sleep.
Okay. A majority of people do. I didn't say sleep. I never said sleep in that context. However, as we get a little bit older, remember, we tend to put things into compartments, and all those words that I had mentioned have to do with sleep, doesn't it? So we think that, and I've really prompted your memory to insert a word that wasn't there. A majority of people usually write sleep, so don't feel bad if you did. It's not that you didn't take anything literal. And again, we have so much information coming in, it's impossible for us to memorize it all. So for those of you that didn't write sleep, congratulations. For those of you that did, no big deal. You're probably on par with the majority of other people. Okay, so
I didn't write it.
what's that?
I said I think that I didn't write it because I read the textbook, so I was like, don't write sleep.
Oh, did they use that in the textbook?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have to come up with a better one. Oh, I'm sad that the book did that. All right, so let me share my screen with you again. All right, so what happens with formation of memories and learning is children tend to, at a young age, oops, I'm not sharing my screen, tend to, again, go in circular motions. They try things to see what works and what doesn't work. And with their memory and learning, it's very similar. And from a young age, we observe that. Your book also highlights an example of Roe and Collier's experiment, where they tied a ribbon to a child's leg, and anytime, and just by happenstance, when the child moved its leg and pulled on the ribbon, it activated the mobile above the baby's crib. So what happened is the baby decided to try it again and developed a learning pattern just on happenstance. But what he had paired with is, if I move my leg and tug on that ribbon, the mobile will activate, which is visually stimulating for the child. So what happens with memory and learning occurs in stages. So they try and determine a goal. And based on that goal, they select a strategy. So for example, a child is maybe incentivized to learning math, and many of you that have gone through school, how were you incentivized at a young age? What kind of rewards did they put in place for you to read books or for you to memorize the multiplication tables? What were some of the incentives that you can remember? Anybody care to share?
They used to give a prize.
Got a prize, like a prize chest or something? Yeah, okay.
I know we received stickers, but the stickers kind of, I think, like after you reached a certain amount of stickers, they would give us a prize.
Okay, all right. So the goal is to get those rewards, right? And that's really how we incentivize children at a young age to do this stuff. Now, I do want to point out that if in a natural environment, children learn naturally. They don't need rewards, believe it or not. However, we're a goal-based society, right? We have certain goals that we need them to meet and milestones that they have to make within the school systems. So therefore, we tend to reward the masses for making certain, meeting certain milestones, right? So based on that reward, the child will usually develop a strategy. They'll come up with a strategy in order to gain that reward or meet that goal, right? So this a strategy could be, usually with help, it might be to go through rote memory. So 1 times 3 equals 3, 2 times 3 equals 6, right? It's all really just recitation and rehearsal. So that strategy is developed, and then it's used. Use that strategy. So based on that strategy, they get feedback, or it's monitored. They either get their reward or they don't get the reward. If they don't, they go back and re-examine their goal and come up with a new strategy and employ that new strategy. If they do, they're going to be likely to repeat that strategy again in order to get that reward. Does that make sense? Y'all with me so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So that's and again, if you think of that as trial and error, it's trial and error at its best, because that's what they're doing. They're trying new things. So your book goes through, again, other memory strategies like autobiographical and metacognition. The one thing that I do want to really touch upon is critical thinking, because we look at critical thinking as what? Why is critical thinking important? Think about where you are and why critical thinking is important. What is critical thinking? Let me ask you that.
Skills needed in life to make decisions daily.
Okay, so skills, right. So questioning, again, going back to this is critical thinking, really. Looking at, especially when you're monitoring what's effective and what's not effective, you're engaged in critical thinking. You're self-reflecting on that. So critical thinking is important for thinking outside the box, trying new things, questioning the validity of what somebody is presenting to you or testing you with, right? So I've got a short, actually, let's see. Yeah, I got a video here to kind of give you 3 examples of what children that have different types of thinking. And I want you to pay attention and let me know what some of those things are and whether they're good or bad, or some positives and negatives to that. All right, so let me play this for you. There we go. A little more updated. Oh, actually, I don't think I gave you good sound here. Hold on a second. Did that sound muffled?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, let me try this. There's a different setting I got to do for videos. Is that better?
Way better.
There are three kinds of thinkers. Naive Nancy. She doesn't care about her thinking. Selfish Sam. He's good at thinking, but he's not fair to others. Fair-minded Fran. She's good at thinking, and she's fair to others. Naive Nancy. I don't need to think. I understand everything without thinking. I just do whatever occurs to me to do. I believe most what I hear. I believe most of what I see on TV. I don't see why I should question either. And I don't need to waste a lot of time trying to figure things out. Why should I when someone will figure things out for me if I wait long enough? It's a lot easier to say I can't than do a lot of work. My parents and my teachers take care of me when I can't take care of myself. The other day, I was having trouble with my math homework and started to cry, so my father did it for me. My parents give me a lot of help. It's easier that way. I do what I am told, keep my mouth shut, and go along with whatever my friends decide. I don't like to make waves. Thinking gets you into trouble. Selfish Sam. I think a lot. It helps me trick people and get what I want. I believe whatever I want to believe. Whatever gets me what I want. I question anyone who asks me to do what I don't want to do. I figure out how to get around my parents. I figure out how to get other kids to do what I want them to do. I even figure out how to avoid thinking if I want. Sometimes I say I can't when I know I could, but I don't want to. You can get what you want from people if you know how to manipulate them. Just the other night, I got to stay up till 11 by arguing with my mother about bedtime. It helps to tell people what they want to hear. Of course, sometimes what they want to hear isn't true. But that doesn't matter because you can only get into trouble when you tell people what they don't want to hear. You can always trick people if you know how. Guess what? You can even trick yourself if you know how. Fair-minded Fran. I think a lot. It helps me to learn. It helps me figure things out. I want to understand my parents and my playmates. In fact, I even want to understand myself and why I do things. Sometimes I do things that I don't understand. It's not easy trying to understand everyone and everything. Lots of people say one thing and do another. You can't always believe what people say. You can't believe a lot of what you see on TV. People often say things not because they mean them, but because they want things and they're trying to please you. I would like to make the world a better place. I want to make it better for everyone, not just for me and my friends. To understand other people, you have to look at things as they do. You have to understand their situation and what you would feel like if you were them. You have to put yourself in their shoes. The other night, I got mad at my sister because she wanted to watch a TV program that was on the same time my favorite show was on. I didn't want to let her until I realized that she needed to watch her program to do some homework for school. I knew then that it wouldn't be fair for me to insist on my show since she did have to do her homework for school.
Okay, I think Fran goes on for quite a while, but I think the point is there. So what did out of the three of them, we have Nancy, Sam, and Fran. Which one, obviously, is probably the most well-adjusted?
Fran.
Okay, why? Why is Fran the most adjusted, would you say?
because she understands that like she can't think for just herself. She has to like do things in courtesy of others. Like with the last example, she wasn't gonna like be like, I want to watch my show, but it was more like
Right.
she had to do homework, so let's let her do what she has to do first.
Right, exactly. Now, think of the parenting styles. I know we haven't really delved into parenting styles just yet. We will. But what kind of, if you look at the three of these, for example, Nancy, what kind of parenting do you think is occurring? What kind of strategies are the caregivers working with Nancy if she's naive?
I mean, it really sounded like that they weren't letting her do anything on her own, not really letting her be independent, not really be able to think on her own, not able to do anything on her own. They seem like that they're heavily involved in her life, but not in like a positive way, not in like a developing way.
Okay, kind of like an overprotective way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And we look at this, we see this mostly with helicopter parents, parents that are constantly guiding children, not guiding children, but doing things for them, doing their homework. I think she talked about if she didn't do her homework, her dad does it for her. What kind of lessons are being taught there? What kind of structure is being implemented? What do you think the outcome of Nancy will be later in life? Is she going to be well adjusted?
She won't be well adjusted.
Okay. What can you foresee happening with her when she gets into college or a job or whatever past when she leaves the house, if she leaves the house? What do you think her outlook would be? What's life going to be like for her?
Like always calling her parents for everything.
Okay. Yeah. You're probably going to have a fearful child, a fearful adult, right? Because now they're going to be experiencing the real world, and they're not going to have that independent mind frame, right? Now, that's not to say that Nancy won't adjust. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult. She's going to probably have to make a lot of mistakes because that she didn't learn before. Socially, what do you think Nancy's social life is like?
I see her as sort of a bystander, just kind of going with the crowd, not really doing what she does on her own.
Okay. Okay, so probably very dependent on other people, maybe, right? You said bystander. I can see both ways. I can see where she would be probably a little bit more self-isolating, but I can also see that she might be very clingy to people. Relationship-wise, that could create somebody, if we have somebody that's codependent on somebody else, that could put them in a very dangerous situation in regards to if you have, especially if you have somebody that's a narcissist in that relationship, might take advantage of her in some way, or there might be some kind of emotional neglect or emotional abuse, or even worse, even physical abuse, because that codependency is there. She doesn't know how to think for herself. So those would be some of the dangers. What about selfish Sam? What kind of parenting style do you think is going on there that's different from Nancy?
The parents like allow.
No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. The parents like allow him to control the situation.
Okay. So he's probably the boss, right?
Mm-hmm.
We would say that there's probably no, or at least little, structure in Sam's life. Okay. Most often we see that with children of split parents, like a split home, when one parent is more accommodating and the other one is trying to implement structure somehow. In other words, I mean, you think you put it on. I think you said it wonderfully, that he's probably the one in charge, right? And he usually is. So what kind of problems is Sam going to have with friends? Like, what's his social life going to be like as a child and as an adult?
I feel like he's going to be like a leader, but he's going to be like the bad sort of leader. He's going to try to get his friends to do what he wants them to do, but he's going to be very controlling, mind freakish like.
Okay, all right. So again, like Nancy, what are we going to see with his self-esteem? Have a high self-esteem, high opinion of himself, or is he going to what are we going to see? Think mental health.
I think he's gonna have a high opinion of himself.
High opinion of himself, but what about his competency? Is he going to be competent? It's going to be low, right? Something we see in perfectionists, something that we also see in narcissistic traits. Okay, so that could be the potential. That's not to say, again, none of these, I'm not saying that any of these children, either Nancy or Sam, are going to grow up to be dysfunctional, but they're going to have hard lessons to learn. Okay, but we would most likely see high self-esteem and low competency if Sam were to grow up in that no structure environment. Okay, so what about Fran, fair-minded Fran? What kind of childhood do you think? What kind of parenting style do you think her parents are employing? That's different from Nancy and Sam.
Well, I mean, she's kind of seen as the paragon of success, and I would believe that with like her parents, that like the parents have some sort of structure there, that they're teaching her and they're allowing her to think on her own. And
right,
yeah,
right. So unlike Nancy, Nancy is she's not born to fail, right? Because her parents are doing for her. She's not independent. What about independence with Fran? Do you think parents allow her to make mistakes?
Yes.
Absolutely. So we're seeing a fair amount of structure, a fair amount of independence, but not to the point where she's in charge. There are barriers in place. There are boundaries that she's expected to follow. We're seeing good structure. And when we get into parenting styles, we're going to talk a lot more about that. So many of you, again, are probably going to be in the educational system or social work, or in some way, you're going to be working with children to develop these critical thinking skills. So some of the areas that your book has highlighted for critical thinking, the keys to critical thinking, and think about this as you're developing any kind of curriculum or plans to get children back on track, is be clear. Be accurate. Be relevant. Relevant, is it A, right? I think relevant. Miss my spell checker. Be logical. And be fair. All these qualities we were able to echo or hear echoed with Fran, right? Being fair, being logical, being relevant, being accurate, being clear. So when we say be clear, can you state what you mean? What do you mean? Asking these, and if you imagine, if you're in a classroom setting, talking to one of the students in the class, and you're trying to guide them into critical thinking. Now, the first thing you're going to want to ask them is, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? Clarify. Being accurate is what they stated. Is what they stated the truth? Is it true? And if you think back to Sam and Nancy, would you assume that the parenting styles would be focusing on clarity and accuracy? Probably not, right? Relevant. Now, relevant, I like to use this one because I think of ADHD or children that might have hyperactivity and not able to stay focused. Part of that is relevancy. A big part of that is relevancy. Is it related to what we're doing, the task at hand? And if not, how can you guide them back onto whatever that thinking or whatever that behavior is that's related to that task, right? Be logical. Does it fit together? So teaching a child to read, for example, having them recite the story as they interpreted it. Does it make sense? If they give you, if they recite a story that they just read and it doesn't make sense, guiding them back to asking, well, does that make sense to you that they would do that? And try and make it a little bit more relevant and logical to them, right? And be fair, helping them to understand how behaviors affect others. Okay. So those are just some strategies for guiding children, for either educators or caregivers to bring up kids to be critical thinkers, because that promotes independency, that promotes structure, and it promotes empathetical thinking. So they can really take on the role of somebody else that might be other than them, which teaches them to be fair. Okay. Any questions on critical thinking? All right, so I have, if I'm going to break you off into groups. Excuse me. I have in D2L, if all of you want to get into there. Oh, actually, I have a question here. Got a question regarding assignment 5. Okay, I'll address that here in a little bit. So if you go to D2L under week 5 resources, I have 2 files there. Just pick one or over the other. If you have Windows, or if you have Word, that's great. If you don't have Word, you can open up the PDF version of this. So open up the case study and go through that case study. It's just a quick little one. And answer the questions. So this has to do with one-to-one principles, stable order principle, and cardinality principle. Those were all in your book, and I believe that those were questions on your quiz. If you need to refer to your book, that's fine, but we'll talk about them, just kind of see what your understanding is of these concepts at a young age for memorization. So any questions before we begin? Did everybody locate that file? All right, so I'm going to break you off into groups.
Wait, where do we go again?
It's under D2L content, week 5 resources. Excuse me.
Okay.
You got it? All right.
Yeah.
Great. All right. And I'm sending you to your rooms now. And give you probably about 5-6 minutes. Okay, give everybody about another 30 seconds to come back. All right, we should have everybody back now. Okay, so what did we come up with for Haley? What did we find out about Haley? Is she able to understand the one-to-one principle?
Our group said no.
Okay, and why not?
Because she continuously is doing like 2, 2, 2. She keeps repeating the number 2 instead of it just showing up once while she's counting the 10. She keeps repeating the number 2 instead of it being like 1, 2, 3. So I don't think she's getting that, like, you can't just continuously count 2, but she's still just getting to the same, like, n number of 10.
Right. So that indicates what?
She's still developing, like her number. I mean, she's only 2.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive, right, for a 2-year-old.
Well, we also said, like, maybe, it's a lot of you're 2. Like, she knows that's like the number she knows right now.
Right. But she's able to depict that each one has its own value, right? So that's a 1-to-1 principle. It may not be, she may not have the sequence right, but she's able to identify each item as being a single item. So that is a 1-to-1 principle. Did anybody else get that? I see where you're going, Kwamir, but and it does to really understand the 1-to-1 principle. It's just being able to count. It may not be count accurately, but it's the ability to count. So she's developing. You can kind of see that she's developing that ability to touch something or point to something and say that's a number, that's a number, that's a number. It may not be the right number, but she's able to do that. So that's the 1-to-1 principle. Stable order principle. What did you come up with for that? Who got that answer? Is she following stable order principle? Kwamir, I see you shaking your head no.
No, I was shaking my head because now I'm thinking, like, I probably didn't really nail this.
That's okay. Now, that's why I wanted to do this, just to kind of illustrate what these are, because you read about them in the book, and they don't give you a lot of examples as to how this is. So I wanted you to really think about this. So stable order. Who got the answer to this, by the way? Is she following stable order principle? Crickets.
We said yes.
Uh-huh.
Because she's saying like the same order every time, even though it's not like rote counting, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She's still saying like the same order every time she's counting.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I mean, this was a difficult one for me to even answer, because if she counted everyone as 2, I would say no, she is not following the stable order principle. However, she does what when she gets to the end?
Says 10.
10, right? So she understands somehow 1 through 10. She has that idea that 1 is less than 10, and when she gets to the 10th one, she counts it as 10. So I would say yes and no. I would say she probably has a concept of larger numbers, and she definitely has a concept of 1-to-1, but the sequence is not quite there yet. And I think, as Kelly said, she's still developing at 2 years old, right? So what about the cardinality principle? Is she following that?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, we're looking at that level up, that 1 through 10, right? She understands the higher the number, the more quantity. So maybe, again, probably don't have a lot of information. She's only 2. Give her a break, right? So how about the last one? This one was kind of a little deep, but I'm curious as to what you think. If Haley was growing up in an Asian country, do you think her counting would be more accurate?
We kind
I
of said
said yes.
Okay, why? It's
The
kind of a
way
trick
they,
question.
when I was
Pride
younger,
themselves on education.
Okay, education. Kwamir, you were beginning to say something?
I was going along the same way. Like when I was younger, I remember in one class they showed us a video where like how they teach math in other in Asian countries compared to like how they teach math here. And in looking at the video, it just made a lot more sense the way they were teaching it to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, well, based off that, if they're learning math that easily, then counting numbers, they probably have an easier way to teach it to kids too.
Right. And we're just, go ahead.
We also said yes because they have like a different way of counting numbers. Like 11 is like 1, 1, 10 or something like that. Like they, in their language, like the numbers make more sense, so it's easier for them to grasp.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So they have a simplified counting system within their language. It's embedded in their language, right? So absolutely, she would probably be a little bit more further along. Was somebody chiming in there?
Yeah, we like our group said yes, but we also talked about like how like maybe their parents value education more, so they study with them more and they help them out more too. So
Okay, that would be, I didn't even consider that, but yeah, that would be a big factor there. They're more of a collectivist society, and parents are a little bit more involved in conformity and bringing up and spending time with children. In the United States, a little bit different, isn't it? We have two working, usually the family system here consists of two working adults and less time for spending time with children. And I know that's not universally true, but a majority of it is. A majority of families operate that way. So should Haley's grandmother worry at all with her development? Probably not. I would see Haley. I think she is meeting all the milestones for where she needs to be at that age. Probably, I would say even a little bit higher. And it's great that her language ability is really there. But again, if you think back to what was our example, Sam, Nancy, and Fran, she's being allowed to discover through self-talk, her self-talk, verbalizing her self-talk and her thoughts. That's a really powerful thing. And now, if you had controlling parents that said, be quiet or do it in your head, that might stifle her ability. She might not engage in nearly as much self-talk, which could stifle her learning ability later on and her ability to come up with those memory strategies and willingness to try new things. Does that make sense? Okay, how did y'all like that example, that case study? That kind of highlight what the book was talking about? Okay, good. All right. Any questions about what we covered today in the material? All right. And I think somebody had a question about an assignment. That's nothing to do with Oh, okay. So the assignment 5, I do want to clarify, you should connect with another student in either this class or another class. But all I really want you to do is to evaluate study strategies, similar to what we were talking about earlier in this lecture. What are some different strategies based on what that goal is, right? If your goal is to understand theories and concepts and write an essay, your study strategy is going to be completely different, or note-taking strategy is going to be completely different than what it would be for a multiple choice or a short answer, right? So that's all I'm really getting you to evaluate, is just what other study practices and study strategies are out there that people are using, okay? Think outside your box, in other words, all right? Yeah, many of you probably came from, I know a lot of you are freshmen, you probably came from high school. Are your study strategies similar in high school as they are to college? Are they a little bit different? What would you say?
Mine are the same, but I really got to change them.
Okay, okay. And what are some reasons why you feel you need to change them?
So in high school, I was kind of a last minute person. I always kind of studied kind of last minute, and like I kind of started doing that in college, and I'm noticing it and not good. I need to change my habits.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear. Sorry, somebody else chiming in there? I'm glad to hear that you acknowledge that, Amber, and hopefully a vast majority of you are feeling that way, because our study strategies are completely different from high school to college. I know I had to adjust mine in a big way. In fact, I didn't even go to college right out of high school because I knew I wasn't ready. I hid out in the military for a couple of years and before I decided I was ready for college. And so it's a maturation process for us as well. But okay. Any other questions before we depart today?
So we only need to grab notes from one person?
Yeah, just one person. Could be from this class, could be from another class. I don't care. Either way, your choice. Okay.
Now, I was doing mines on another person that's in college though, so I had to do somebody in this class.
No, you can do it from anybody, any other student, any
Oh,
student
okay.
whatsoever. Okay.
Do we have to turn in that case study?
No, you don't. Those are just practice for class to illustrate what some of these principles and concepts are in the book.
Okay.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, I do thank you for your attention. So let me think of. So I don't think not next week. It's a week after. I think we have our midterm and we have the fall break. I believe, right? I think that's the 12th. I think. So we won't be meeting on that Tuesday, not next week, the Tuesday after, because I think that jumps to a Monday schedule. Am I correct in that, James? Do you know anything about that?
I think I'm not sure entirely, honestly, with everything going on with Zoom and everything.
Okay. All right. So I'm pretty sure that we don't meet that Tuesday. So we will meet that Thursday, but that's going to be for a review. Maybe usually James comes up with a clever study review for the midterm. So I don't know. Well, I'll talk to him and see if there's a way that we can do that via Zoom. What's that?
That's this upcoming Thursday?
No. Not next week. The week after. So week 7. That we're going to be in week 7 that week. So week 7 is when we're going to have the midterm. The best way to study for the midterm is to go through those quizzes multiple times. I'm going to put something out there that's going to be all of the quiz items. I'm not going to be giving you the answers, so please don't ask. But I'll give you the quizzes, and you can take them as many times as you want. There's no grade for it. It'll just be a practice. But in the meantime, until I get those out this weekend, you can certainly take those quizzes that you have access to now multiple times to just practice for it. It's going to be 50 multiple choice questions, 2 points each for a total of 100 points. So please don't miss it. It'll be open on 12:01 Monday morning, and it'll be open through Friday night at midnight. So please take it within that window. I don't care when. And I'm asking that you not wait until the weekend because I have to get the grades in by Sunday night. So for your midterms. So please try and have those done by Friday. Any other questions?
Do you know like the time frame that we're given? Is it going to be like an hour or
90 minutes for 50 questions, and you have access to all those questions through those quizzes. So I usually find I've had students complete it in about 10. So if you're really brushed up and got 100%, by the way. So very easy if you're well studied for this. So practice those exams or practice those quizzes. I'm sorry, frequently and often. Okay. All right, if nothing else, I'll be hanging around. James, if you can hang around for a few minutes, I just have to run something by you. Everybody else, have a great weekend, and I'll see you back here on Tuesday.
I have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.